All right, so in the last video, we talked about literal equations and what those were. And the idea was that there was going to be multiple variables, like two or more variables, and they want you to solve for one of them, right? In this video, I want to talk about why that's actually important, okay? Now, the title is called Rewriting Formulas. Now, in math, as well as science, there's going to be some crossover here. We use formulas a lot, okay? And sometimes a formula will be solved for one variable, but it would be much nicer if it was solved for a different variable. So it's very easy. We could just move things around to make it look the way we want it to look. Okay, so this one's a pretty basic one. But for example, if we were to write down the area, the area of a parallelogram. And a parallelogram is a fancy term for like a square or a rectangle or a shape that has two sets of parallel sides essentially. Okay, the formula for that is that the area, so capital A, is equal to base times height. That's the formula for the area of a parallelogram. Now, for what we're doing right now, the shape itself, not too important. We're focusing in on that equation. So right now, that equation is solved for A. It says the area, okay? But what happens if I want you to rearrange it? So what if I ask, what is the formula for the height, or H? So could we rearrange this equation so that it's H equals? And the answer to that is yes. Okay? We treat it just like any other equation. We move things around by doing opposites. So if this was our equation, right, let me write it one more time. So area is equal to base times height. And they want you to rearrange it so that it's H equals. So you want to keep the H part, but get rid of everything else. Now this one's pretty easy because there's only a B that's attached to it. And then again, the B is attached with multiplication. In this one, they even give you the multiplication dot, so to kind of point that out. So to move it to the other side, or the opposite of multiplication, would be division. So we could simply divide by B, whatever you do to one side, do to both. Okay, on the right side, these B's cancel, and now we have H by itself is equal to A over B. And that's what they want, right? So the formula for the height of a parallelogram is its area divided by its base. Okay, so we're just taking a formula and we're going to rearrange it to match what we want, the variable that we want to know about. Now this one was a pretty basic example, pretty easy. Okay, let's try one that's a little bit more challenging. Okay, so let's go and write this one down. So let's talk about the area, area of a trapezoid. Okay, now the shape itself, not too important at the moment. You'll deal a lot more with shapes in like geometry, but just for reference, trapezoid is the one that kind of looks like this. Okay, and again, I'll give you guys the formulas to start off with. Your task is just to be able to rearrange it. Okay, so the area of a trapezoid is A equals the height, H, and then in parentheses, base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Okay, that's the formula for the area of a trapezoid. Now, I know it's confusing because there's two bases, but that's what the formula is. Like in our picture, like the top part would be base 1 and the bottom part would be base 2. And the height is kind of just from there to there. That's the H. Okay, but you'll get more into details about that in geometry. Our focus is on this formula, and let's say the question is rearrange for H. Let's say we want to know what the height is again. Okay, this one's a lot more challenging. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and draw that line down where the equal sign is so we can see left side and right side. And where the idea is that we want to keep the H, but get rid of everything else. Okay, now because it's one giant fraction, I would recommend starting there. Let's get rid of that 2. Remember, fractions are division. So the inverse, to get rid of that 2, the inverse of division would be multiplication. So what we can do is we can multiply, switch to a pen, we can multiply both sides by 2. Okay? So what that causes to happen is that these 2's cancel each other out. And we're left with this. 2 times a is just will leave us 2a. We still have h, and then parentheses, b1 plus b2. Okay? Now, for the b1 plus b2, we still need to get rid of that. One option is you could distribute the h, but that's actually going to complicate things more than help. Okay? So a better way to do it is think about this. Don't write this part down, but if you had this question, h x equals 2a, you can get rid of that x by dividing, right? You could go divide by x, and they cancel, okay? So you could do that if that was the question. The question we have is in parentheses. So think of the parentheses as one giant group, like it's one chunk. So what we can do is we can actually divide by that entire chunk. Just like we divided by x, so let's divide by b1 plus b2, okay? Because again, when there's something outside of a parentheses like the h is, those are connected through multiplication, right? They didn't write it in here, but you could think of it like a multiplication dot in there. Okay, and then whatever you do to one side, make sure you do to both. So divide by b1 plus b2. Okay, so what happens is that this entire chunk on the top cancels out with this entire chunk on the bottom. And we're left with just h. And then on the left side, we can't combine any of that, right? None of them are like terms. We have a's and b1s and b2s. So just keep it all separate. So the answer is 2a over b1 plus b2. And we know we're done because remember the question was rearrange for h. And we did. We have h equals. Okay, so that's how you approach these questions. Okay, and again, there's a huge crossover with this and science. Right, depending on what science you're in, sometimes you have to rearrange formulas all the time. Okay, so for example, let's do one more. Let's scroll down a little bit. This one's a pretty common one, especially in like science classes. Okay, you're probably familiar that when you talk about like temperatures in science, there's different kinds of measurements, right? There's Fahrenheit, there's Celsius, and depending on what class you're in, they might even have like Kelvin in there, okay? But sometimes it's better to have it in Fahrenheit, sometimes better to have it in Celsius. So there's like a conversion there that you have to do sometimes. So let's go ahead and use F to represent Fahrenheit. I have to look up the spelling because I don't know how to spell it. Okay, and let's say C is equal to Celsius. Okay, now in the US, we use Fahrenheit. Okay, a lot of other countries, in fact, probably most other countries, they use Celsius. Okay. So sometimes if you travel to a different country and you ask like, what's the temperature going to be like today? Like they're going to say a number and it might not match up with what you're thinking about because you're thinking in Fahrenheit. Okay. So there's this conversion equation. Okay. And again, I'll give them to you. You don't have to memorize these. I'll give them to you. Okay. So the equation is Celsius is equal to 5 times Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 9. Okay. Now, where this equation came from, not too important right now. Just know that it's there. I gave it to you. Okay, it's important to know how to rearrange and solve for the other one. Okay, so let's say the question is solve or rearrange for Fahrenheit. Okay, this one's a little bit different because notice it's on the inside. Oops. So we want to keep this, but get rid of everything else. Okay, this one's about as challenging as they're going to get for now. Okay, so again, you see that fraction, so that's probably a good place to start. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw that line. So you can see left side and right side. We're dividing by 9, so to get rid of it, let's go ahead and multiply by 9. Okay, so don't let the fractions scare you. Whatever you do to one side, make sure you're doing to both. Okay, 9's cancel out. Now we have this. 9c is equal to 5 times f minus 32. Okay. Again, we could, if we wanted to, distribute that 5, but I think that just makes more work for us. Okay, let's just do the same we did before, right? We want to get rid of the 5, so let's just divide by 5. Because again, that 5 on the outside means it's being multiplied. So the opposite of that would be dividing. Okay, both sides. So the 5s are canceling out. So now we have this. 9c over 5 equals f minus 32. And then now the last step would be to get rid of that 32. Okay, it's negative, so let's add it to the other side. So plus 32. And I'll just put it over to the right over here, plus 32. Because we can't really combine those. They're not like terms. Okay, and let's clean it up one more time. So again, on a quiz or a test, this is the showing the work part, right? If you just put an answer, you're not going to get it correct. So the Fahrenheit is equal to, we have 9c, probably a capital C, sorry, 9c over 5 plus 32. And that would be our answer. Okay. So again, the purpose of these literal equations is when we start getting into word problems, which is the next section, sometimes it's important to change from one equation and rearrange it for a different variable. Okay. And we'll be doing that a lot this year. All right. If you guys have questions, let me know. You can always send me a direct message. And the assignment for this will be posted tomorrow.